In this video, we'll have a quick look at what is fragments in Android. So a fragment represents a behavior or a portion of a user interface in fragment activity. You can combine multiple fragments in a single activity to build a multi-pane user interface and reuse a fragment in multiple activities. You can think of a fragment as a modular section of an activity which has its own life cycle, receives its own input events, and which you can add or remove while the activity is running, sort of like a sub-activity that you can reuse in different activities. So fragments are new in Android 3.0, Honeycomb API 11. It's also usable in previous versions using the compatibility library. A fragment represents a behavior or a portion of the user interface in an activity, and you can combine multiple fragments in a single activity. Fragment has its own life cycle and is directly affected by the activity's life cycle that hosts the fragment. If the activity gets paused or destroyed, so will all fragments on the activity. Remember that your activity hosts the fragment, so if your activity gets destroyed or paused, so will all of the fragments. Fragments should be modular and reusable. So what does that mean? Let's take a quick look at this picture that I took from the Android developers website. So you can see that we've got two types of situations here. We can have people that works on a tablet which got a large screen real estate, which means there's a lot of space on the screen to work with. And then you can also get people that just working on a normal telephone. And now if you put your normal telephone in landscape, there's also a bit more screen real estate over the width of the screen. So this situation on the left could be for a tablet or also for a phone that is currently in landscape mode. So when we have a lot of space on the screen, we can divide the screen into two sections. And normally you will see like apps, for example, your Gmail application, you can see that if you put your phone in landscape mode, your email application will automatically place your screen on the left hand side, the list view, and on the right hand side you will see the data for your email. Whereas if you're just on the phone, it will show a list of all your emails, and if you click on one of the emails, it takes you to the details of that email. And this is where fragments can really help us out. So let's look at this example. If there's a lot of space on the screen, I can have one activity, and then on the activity I can have two fragments. So I can have a list view fragment and I can have a detail view fragment. So in this case, I can click on an item here in the list view, and then on the second fragment, I can show the details, but it's still on the same activity. Now on this side, because we do not have enough screen real estate, we will show the list view. So we can still use only one activity, and on the activity we show the list view. If the user clicks on an item in the list view, on the same activity, we can then just show the detail view. And then communication takes place between your fragment and your other fragment. And we'll get to the communication part now. So here you can see at the text also, another way to do this is to have one activity show this part and then another activity show that part. But that's up to you how you want to do this. If you can dynamically change your fragments in runtime, and that's the nice thing about using fragments. It's reusable and it's modular. Let's take a quick look at the fragments life cycle. So the picture on the left hand side is taken from the website, the Android developers website, as well as the information that I provide here. So you can see that the fragment is added, it runs the onAttach, the onCreate view, on activity created, on start, on resume, and then your fragment is active. Then also if we move away, it can go to on pause, on stop, on destroy, on detach, and so forth until the fragment is destroyed. So here's some of the methods that can run there and that you can do something in. For example, in the onCreate, the system calls this when creating the fragment. The onCreate view method will run when the system calls it when it's time for the fragment to draw its user interface for the first time. And the onPause, the system calls this method as the first indication that the user is leaving the fragment, and this is then usually where you should commit any changes that should be persisted beyond the current user session. So these are some of the methods, and then some of the methods that we will use in coding now will be some of these methods. For example, the onAttach method is called when the fragment has been associated with the activity, which means that the activity is now using this fragment, and then you can see in that method that we'll do later on that the activity will also be passed into that method. So you have a link to the activity that currently hosts the fragment. If you look at the onCreateView method, this is called to create the view hierarchy associated with the fragment. There's the onActivityCreated method called when the activities onCreate method has returned, when the activities onCreate method has returned. So a lot of the work will be done in this onActivityCreated. Then we know the activity is done with its work, it's done loading this fragment, and we can start doing the work in this one. Then the onDestroyView and also the onDetach methods called when the fragment is being disassociated from the activity. So let's just quickly have a look at communication between fragments. So two fragments cannot directly communicate with each other. They need to communicate with each other via the activity that's hosting the two fragments, or the 3 or the 4 fragments. So let's take this example where we have a red fragment and an orange fragment. So if we just quickly take them off the activity there, you can see that at the back we've got the activity, and this activity is hosting both the red fragment as well as the orange fragment there. Now, in order for us to communicate between the red fragment and the orange fragment, that is, for instance, when we have a list view in the red fragment and we click on an item in the list view and then we want to display the information on the orange fragment, how do we do that? So we do that by using an interface. So we will declare an interface in the side of the red fragment and let the activity implement that interface with a method. So when an item gets clicked in the red fragment, we send that information to the main activity, and the main activity, or the activity that's hosting the fragments, will communicate back to the orange fragment. So that's the basics of fragments. Let's go and have a look in coding.